The JJK anime has undeniably ascended to new heights, and as with many wonderful things from the series, we have Gojo to thank for it. But it does in fact take two. Toji Fushiguru looks and sounds great. The dude is buff as hell, he's got a deep voice and moves like a killer. With a blinding pace, his attacks are sporadic and brutal. They do a great job of making him feel like a tank of a human, slamming through buildings and taking jujutsu techniques from Gojo to the face, then getting right back up. His assassination title is well represented by wild evasive maneuvers, never able to be pinned down by Gojo, complementing his innate quality of the heavenly restriction, making him the only person to challenge Gojo at what makes him special, pushing his worn down six eyes to their limit. This is a grudge match long in the making since the time Toji first encountered Gojo. As you may know, even child Gojo shook the jujutsu world. Evildoers everywhere were scared and scattered. Something as simple as a glance from what would normally be a person's blind spot towards Toji was enough to rattle an already established legend of the Zenin clan, a highly prestigious powerhouse of an organization. This momentary encounter, while not involving any strikes or techniques, was one Toji would never forget, influencing his plans a decade later and bringing him self-doubt towards his ability to fulfill the mission. Now, to avoid spoiling some of the later events past the anime, let's just say Toji has more than proven that he's a force of nature. He's a heavy hitter of the verse, a demon for sorcerers to cower in the presence of, especially the Zenin clan. The fact that Gojo had already put this much pressure on him speaks volumes to the scope of the achievement. Nonetheless, Toji utilizes very effective planning, in not only waiting for the highly cautious and defensive Gojo to tire himself in the role of guardian protector, but using misdirection and biding his time until Gojo fully believed he'd crossed the finish line. Mission complete under the protection of his little school, and Tengen's barrier. Right as all that tension is leaving Gojo, as he's finally able to kick off his shoes from some very lengthy and taxing days of work, perhaps thinking about the next movie he'll watch or his next nap, and then boom! He's thrown a massive curveball, the calm being burned up as a fuel to enhance the sudden shock. The hunter has taken perfect advantage of Gojo's misguided complacency, shocking the hell out of him and the viewer. With the special talent that both makes him an outcast to society and the sharpest weapon against sorcerers as a species, the invisibility to bypass barriers and drive a sword into Gojo's chest, the tone is instantly flipped upside down, as the untouchable Gojo, who even in the anime we've seen, has been completely immune to anything but a domain, is skewered and later cut to pieces, thoroughly shredded. The sheer disrespect from Toji's furious carving and menacing smile makes me, as a Gojo fan, emotionally damaged. You can see just how much Toji loves to indulge in the tarnishing of an amazing sorcerer's reputation. That self-affirming act of proving that he, a monkey who stepped outside the bounds of all that a sorcerer relies on to make them strong, can still be such a monster and take down even the finest the world has to offer. Toji is thriving on us Gojo fans' downfall. This is the opposite of what we're used to, and it makes this moment traumatic. Since we're talking about the anime, I must say that, my god, this is a beautiful depiction of the series. The colors are vibrant, the animation buttery smooth throughout long flowing shots. From the characters' bodies and faces to the debris, landscape, and jujutsu attacks, the camera is super active, spinning and zooming to keep up with and accentuate the madness of the battle, locking onto Toji as he's sent flying through the air and buildings. The scene where Gojo uses blue in particular being immaculate, the way he waves his arms around and poses, conveys the artistic expression, freedom, passion, and madness that goes into his sorcery, on top of all the other things mentioned. Gojo clears the battlefield with the beauty of blue, in order to counterbalance Toji's tactical approach, specifically his assassination style of moving through the dense cover to claim an advantage. But one adaptation deserves another. Gojo only manages to bring out more of Toji's arsenal, allowing him to display again through combat that he's more than a brute. He can equip himself with tools that play to his strengths rather than relying on a stealth-conducive environment to get the job done. He carries a means of rigging the environment in his favor, the flyheads that block out the vision of Gojo, and through merely a delay in his offense, Toji's able to play mind games with Gojo. He said at the beginning of the fight he'd use the misdirection of false goals to ensure Gojo was worn down. This time, reflecting on his situation reminds Gojo of Toji's supposed true objective, though we learn this was very much a personal vendetta Toji was seeking to complete. Something as subtle as a 180-degree turn gives Toji an edge in the fight to push Gojo onto the defensive, to receive one last surprise, the inverted spear of heaven, a fitting weapon with a fitting name to take out this early Gojo. Gojo lived his life knowing a security like no other, mission after mission, believing in his infinity to stop all the harm that might appear. But when he finally needed that safety net, it fell apart. Devoured by the Grim Reaper, consumed, his body left to rot, a feast for flies. Gojo had to reach the bottom, to be humbled, intimately understand his limits, to appreciate all his gifts, and envision something greater, to break out of the complacency of believing you're the peerless king. In the unwelcoming embrace of death, something ignites within Gojo. Just like you've seen with Mahito, a rare truth was found in the place we try our hardest to avoid. Severe loss in this world is the path to transcendence. Where love and friendship are at the heart of other mangas, aggression and death reign over Jujutsu Kaisen. We must be prepared to take the fall. If Gojo were to remain untouched, he would have been incomplete. We may not have even respected him the same way otherwise. Grow from your L's, kids. That's the message here. Now this spark of inspiration transforms Gojo. His mind is restructured, his face unrecognizable to his best friend. The character we saw in episode back no longer exists. This is the one who left it all behind, and his overwhelming intensity. He's drowning in bliss. What was found in death is so sweet, he couldn't feel sadness or revenge anymore. Neither his failure to protect the weak, his best friend, nor himself are given even a moment of concern. This is Transcendence, as the anime bathes Gojo in beautiful sunbeams, illumination matching his mind, body, and soul. Gojo's eyes are not on Toji, who he speaks to, nor his attacks which he evades effortlessly. He stares wildly into the sky as he screams out that obscure, disorganized rant, confusing his opponent, a delusional state of euphoria. But sometimes when you're on that next level of perception, it's gonna be married to insanity. Toji rushes in with that same animalistic gaze and vicious bloodlust, but this time it's not toward a man with fear, uncertainty, and attachment. It's a god without any of those. They're now foes worlds apart, even as the person who tore him apart hours ago closes in. No mind is paid. Toji needs to fight just for Gojo's attention, and when he does look over, the eyes alone are too much to handle, gunning down Toji's confidence. He didn't know why, but his body could tell that this was an unreasonable threat. Gojo basks in the sensations of the world around him, hyper aware of the smallest details. A beauty even with his 6 eyes, which see better than all others, remained invisible to him. All of the earth and life that surrounds him, a calmness like still water, allowing him to see without eyes, to move without thought. Toji's assault is dissolved effortlessly by the Honored One. Gojo doesn't rush, he flows, with the body language of an inspired artist. He has the freedom and imagination to fuse two opposite forces, creating an entirely new substance, imaginary mass. Time freezes around him. His movements are the only ones that matter to anything. Nature bends to him, and he dishes out what's become one of the most classic lines already. Throughout heaven and earth, I alone am the Honored One. And with a subtle gesture, just the snap, from that deep calm and peace, an unrivaled destructive force is brought forward. His greatest creation is unleashed on Toji. Toji, in accepting this mission that he'd ordinarily have turned down, in chasing another person, seeking validation, looking to prove himself against the prejudice of his clan, concerning himself with their opinions, rather than accepting himself as already proven, strayed from this Gojo's mentality. Everything came second to himself in that moment for Gojo, and it's this gap that had lost the fight for Toji before it began. The hunter's precious instincts had secretly dulled, and he paid the price before God. Toji reaches for that missing part of himself, surprised to have his hand slip through the air. He thought the pride, self-respect, and respect for others had been disposed of, but there was more of him than he realized. His wife and son were another inconsistency in his flawless monster persona, punished for having a heart, punished for wanting to prove yourself, such natural instincts. But people like Gojo are beyond the natural. It's kinda sad for Toji. His humanity was his downfall. If you consider how his final words were spent on preserving his legacy, hoping that Megami would be helped by Gojo, and if you've been caught up on the manga, it gets even sadder looking back. But hopefully that turns around. I'm in need of some more happy outcomes in JJK because they're few and far between, to put it lightly. I think Gege likes to make us suffer. It's fantastic for JJK that the anime returned. This is a perfect storm of excitement and popularity. I've been absolutely losing my mind reading the latest fight in the manga. And for the anime-only viewers, I'm glad they can at last get a taste of what I consider to be some of the finest Jujutsu Kaisen has to offer, because some of my friends have been downplaying the series, and I get that stuff like Goodwill isn't the most interesting, but this right here and what's to come in Shibuya will be consistent high-tier material. Especially when it comes to perceptions about Gojo, this arc is so vital. There's been a sad amount of dismissal of Gojo as this empty powerhouse character, but this isn't the full story at all. And even as a powerhouse, I think the series does probably the best job I've seen at making the most out of the role. I go much more in depth with this in another Gojo video, go check that out if you want. I also plan to make this very clear when I speak on the latest Gojo fight in the manga, because along with being one of the most exhilarating fights of all time, it's made Gojo far and away the best character in the series, and a real candidate for being the coolest anime character hands down. With all that said, keep an eye out for more JJK and anime content, like and subscribe to your boy Woski, and I'll see you later. Peace.